The alarm bells rang through the crystal towers of Nexus Prime. Ambassador Zethkar rushed down the long hallway, his four arms moving quickly as he tried to reach the emergency meeting room. His blue skin was covered in sweat, and his eyes showed fear. The Galactic Council had not called an emergency meeting in over 200 years. The last time was when the Void Plague almost destroyed half the galaxy. But today felt different. Today felt worse. Zethkar burst through the doors of the meeting room. Inside, representatives from all the major species sat around a huge table made of floating light. The Veltari, the Krexnoids, the Silicon Mines, the Tree Speakers, everyone was there, and everyone looked scared. "What is happening?" Zethkar asked as he took his seat. Council Archon Mordoon stood at the center of the room. He was old, even by his species standards. His gray skin was covered in the ritual scars that showed his age and wisdom. He had been alive for over 800 years. He had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. But today, his hands shook. "We have received reports from our outer rim stations," Mordoon said, his voice heavy. "Long-range sensors have detected something moving toward our galaxy." A hologram appeared above the table. It showed the edge of their galaxy, where the stars began to fade into the dark space between galaxies. But there, in that dark space, something was moving. Something huge. At first, our scientists thought it was a natural phenomenon, Mordoon continued. Perhaps a rogue black hole or a wandering star cluster. But then we received this. The hologram changed. Now it showed a recording of radio signals. The patterns were strange but familiar, too familiar. "This signal pattern," whispered Elder Thysavel of the Krexnoids, "it cannot be." "It is," Mordoon said grimly. "The linguistic analysis confirms it. These signals are in human language." The room fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was the gentle hum of the building's systems. Then, slowly, the representatives began to speak. "Impossible," said the Silicon Mind representative, its mechanical voice crackling. "The humans were exiled 3 centuries ago. They could not have survived in the void." "We made sure of that," added the tree speaker, its leaves rustling with agitation. "We sent them beyond the galactic barriers. There is nothing out there but empty space and death." But Zethkar remembered the old stories. He had been young when the humans were exiled, but he remembered the debates. The humans had been unlike any species the galaxy had ever encountered. They were not the strongest or the smartest. They were not the fastest or the most advanced. But they had something else, something that made them dangerous. They never gave up. While other species accepted their place in the universe, humans always pushed further. They turned every tool into a weapon. They found ways to survive in places that should have killed them. They took impossible situations and somehow made them work. That was why the Council had voted to exile them. Not because they were evil, but because they were unpredictable. In a galaxy that valued order and stability, humans were chaos. "Show us the sensor data," Zethkar said quietly. Mordoon nodded to the technician who updated the hologram. What appeared made everyone gasp. The dark space beyond their galaxy was full of lights. Thousands of them. No, millions of them. They moved in perfect formation, like a vast fleet heading straight for the Milky Way. "How many ships?" asked the Veltari representative. The technician's voice was barely a whisper. "Our computers cannot count them all. The number keeps growing. Current estimate is over 1 million vessels." The room erupted in panic. Representatives jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of different languages. The tree speaker's leaves turned brown with fear. The Silicon Mine's lights flashed red. Even the normally calm Krexnoids were making distressed clicking sounds. "Silence!" Mordoon roared, and the room fell quiet. "We must remain calm. We must think clearly." But Zethkar could see that Mordoon was not calm. The old Archon's scars were glowing, which only happened when he was terrified. "What do we know about their technology?" Zethkar asked. The technician brought up new data. The energy signatures are strange. Some of the ships are larger than our biggest space stations. Their power output exceeds anything in our databases, and the formation they are using, it's like nothing we've seen before. "How long until they reach the galactic rim?" Morden asked. "At their current speed? 6 days. 6 days. In 6 days, the humans would return to the galaxy that had thrown them out. And they were not coming back empty-handed." Zethkar thought about the vote. 300 years ago, he had been one of the few who argued against exile, not because he loved humans, but because he understood them. Humans did not forgive. Humans did not forget. And humans always came back stronger. "We need to prepare the Grand Armada," said the Veltari representative. "Every ship, every weapon. We must show them that we are ready to defend ourselves." "Against 1,000,000 ships?" Zethkar asked. "How many vessels can we gather?" "The Grand Armada has 50,000 ships when fully assembled," Mordun replied. "It is the largest military force in galactic history." Zethkar did the math in his head. 50,000 against over 1,000,000. The humans had spent 3 centuries in the dark space between galaxies, and somehow they had built a fleet that was 20 times larger than anything the Council could assemble. "There is something else," the technician said nervously. "We have detected transmissions between the human ships. They are using quantum communication methods that we do not understand. Their technology appears to be far advanced beyond what they had when they left." The room fell silent again. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Finally, Zethkar spoke. "They did not just survive out there, they thrived." Morden nodded slowly. "It appears so. The question now is, what do they want?" "Revenge," said the Silicon Mind simply. "Maybe," Zethkar replied. "Or maybe something else. Humans are unpredictable, remember?" The meeting continued for hours. They discussed military strategies, diplomatic options, and evacuation plans. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake 300 years ago. They had thought they were getting rid of a problem. Instead, they had created something much worse. The humans were coming home, and they were no longer the weak, scattered species that had been exiled. They had become something new, something powerful, something that had spent 3 centuries learning how to survive in the most hostile environment imaginable. As the meeting finally ended, Zethkar stood at the window of the tower, looking out at the stars. Soon, those stars would be filled with human ships. Ships built with technology the galaxy did not understand, crewed by people who had every reason to hate them. The galaxy had exiled humanity to protect itself. Now it might need humanity's forgiveness to survive. But humans, Zethkar remembered, were not known for being forgiving. The countdown had begun. In 6 days, everything would change. Admiral Sarah Chen Okafor stood on the bridge of the Terran Renaissance, watching the galaxy of her birth grow larger on the main screen. Behind her ship stretched the largest fleet in human history. The numbers were so big, they seemed impossible. Over 1,000,000 vessels, each one a masterpiece of engineering that combined the knowledge of 1,000 worlds. Sarah was tall and strong, with dark skin marked by the ritual scars that all fleet commanders wore. Each scar told a story of survival, of battles fought in the dark spaces between galaxies, of worlds claimed and defended against things that the Milky Way had never dreamed of. She had been born in the void, 70 years after the exile. She had never seen Earth or any of the worlds that humans once called home, but she had heard the stories. Every human child grew up hearing about the galaxy that had thrown them away, the council that had decided humanity was too dangerous to exist among civilized species. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Commander Torres from the communications station. "We are receiving signals from the Galactic Rim. The Council has assembled their Grand Armada." Sarah smiled. The Grand Armada. She remembered, reading about it in the old databases. 50,000 ships, the pride of galactic civilization. Once, it would have been impressive. Once, it would have been enough to make humanity tremble. "How many ships do they have?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. 53,412 vessels, Torres replied. "All major species are represented. It's the largest force they've ever assembled." Sarah nodded. Around her, the bridge crew continued their work. Humans, yes, but also Zephyrians with their blue skin and silver eyes, nomad singers whose music could navigate hyperspace, and dozens of other species that humanity had met in their long journey through the void. The exile had not broken humanity. It had freed them. In the dark between galaxies, humans had found worlds that the Council never knew existed. Ancient ruins filled with technology that made faster-than-light travel look like a child's toy. Living planets that could think and dream. Species so old and wise that they remembered when the universe was young, and all of them had joined humanity. Not because humans conquered them, but because humans had something that the galaxy lacked. They had hope. They had the belief that any problem could be solved, any challenge could be overcome. "Status report from the fleet," called Commander Jackson from the tactical station. "All vessels report ready," Sarah replied. "Remind me of our current strength." Jackson pulled up the numbers on his screen. 1,200,008 vessels in the main fleet. Support ships number another 300,000. Our shipyards in the Andromeda staging area are producing 200 new vessels per day. Sarah nodded. The numbers were staggering, but they represented something more than just military might. Each ship was crewed by beings who had chosen to stand with humanity. Each vessel carried the hopes and dreams of civilizations that had found in humanity what they had been searching for their entire existence. "What about our technology assessment?" Sarah asked. "Our engineers estimate that we are approximately 300 years ahead of current galactic standard," replied Dr. Kim from the science station. "Our quantum drives are 50 times faster than their best engines. Our weapon systems operate on principles they haven't discovered yet. And our defensive capabilities." She paused. "Admiral, their most powerful weapons couldn't scratch the paint on our smallest scout ship. The exile had given humanity something precious. Time. 300 years to grow, to learn, to become something greater than they had ever been, while the galaxy remained comfortable and stagnant. Humanity had been forced to innovate or die. They had chosen to innovate." "Admiral," Torres called again, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding that we stop our approach and submit to inspection." Sarah laughed, and the sound echoed around the bridge. "After 300 years, they want to inspect us? How polite of them." "Should I respond?" Torres asked. "Open a channel to the Council," Sarah ordered. "All frequencies, maximum power. I want every being in the galaxy to hear this." The communications array of the Terran Renaissance was more powerful than the combined output of a dozen Council worlds. When Sarah spoke, her voice would reach every inhabited system in the galaxy. "Galactic Council," she began, her voice calm and clear. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen Okafor of the Human Reclamation Fleet. 300 years ago, you sent us a message. You told us we were too dangerous for your civilized galaxy. You exiled us to the void, expecting us to die quietly in the dark." Dao paused, looking out at the stars that had once been forbidden to her people. "We received your eviction notice. Now we're here to discuss the lease renewal." On the screen, she could see the Council's Grand Armada taking defensive positions. 50,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. It was impressive. It was also completely useless. "Admiral," called Commander Martinez from the Strategic Planning Station. "The Council fleet is moving to intercept us. Should we prepare for battle?" "No," Sarah replied. "We're not here to fight. We're here to come home." But she knew the Council wouldn't see it that way. They would see the massive human fleet and assume the worst. They would think this was about revenge, about conquest, about settling old scores. They would be wrong. Sarah touched the control panel, opening an internal channel to her fleet commanders. All ships, maintain formation. Do not charge weapons. Do not raise shields. We are not invaders. We are not conquerors. We are humans, returning to the galaxy of our birth. The responses came back quickly. Over 1 million ship captains, all acknowledging her orders. Behind each captain were crews numbering in the thousands. The human fleet carried more people than some entire star systems. But it wasn't just humans anymore. The 3 centuries of exile had changed everything. Humanity had become something larger, something that included dozens of species who had chosen to stand with them. They were no longer just humans returning home. They were the representatives of an entire civilization that had grown up in the dark spaces beyond the galaxy. "Admiral," Dr. Kim said quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildups from the Council fleet. They're preparing to fire." Sarah sighed. Some things never changed. When faced with something they didn't understand, the galaxy's first instinct was always violence. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," she ordered. "Do not return fire. I repeat, do not return fire. Let them make the first move." The human fleet began to spread out, each ship moving with precision that would have been impossible for any other species. 300 years of survival in hostile space had taught them to move like a living thing, to react as one mind with 1 million bodies. On the screen, Sarah could see the Council fleet's weapons beginning to glow. Soon, they would fire. Soon, they would try to destroy the returning humans with the same weapons that had once seemed so powerful. Sarah almost felt sorry for them. They had no idea what humanity had become. They still thought of humans as the weak, primitive species. They had exiled centuries ago. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But first, Sarah decided, they needed a demonstration. Something to show the galaxy exactly what 300 years in the void had taught humanity. "Signal the Prometheus," she ordered. "Tell Captain Rodriguez it's time to show them what we've learned." The Prometheus was a medium-sized cruiser, nothing special by fleet standards. But what made it special wasn't its size or its weapons. What made it special was what it could become. Sarah smiled as she watched the ship separate from the main fleet and head toward the Council's armada. Soon, the galaxy would understand why humanity was no longer afraid of anything. Soon, they would all understand what it meant to be human. Fleet Commander Thisavelle watched the human ship approach his armada with growing confusion. The vessel was alone, separated from the massive human fleet that hung like a dark cloud at the edge of the galaxy. It was medium-sized by human standards, probably carrying no more than a few thousand crew members. Against 50,000 Council ships, it seemed like suicide. "Sir," called his tactical officer, "the human vessel is not responding to our warning signals. Should we open fire?" Thisavelle hesitated. His species, the Krexnoids, were known for their military precision. They had been the backbone of galactic defense for over 1,000 years. But something about this situation felt wrong. Why would the humans send a single ship against an entire armada? "Hold fire," he ordered. "Let's see what they're planning." On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Maria Rodriguez checked her systems one final time. Her ship was about to demonstrate 300 years of human innovation in the most dramatic way possible. The technology they were about to use had been developed in the dark spaces between galaxies, tested on worlds where the laws of physics seemed more like suggestions. "All crew to battle stations," she announced. "Begin transformation sequence." The Council fleet watched in amazement as the human ship began to change. Its hull seemed to flow like liquid metal, reshaping itself into something completely different. Weapon ports appeared where there had been none before. The ship's size began to increase as internal systems reorganized themselves. "What are they doing?" Thisavelle demanded. "Unknown, sir," replied his science officer. Their ship appears to be transforming. The energy readings are off the charts. I've never seen anything like this." The transformation continued for several minutes. When it was complete, the Prometheus looked nothing like the ship that had left the human fleet. It was larger, sleeker, and covered in weapon systems that seemed to bend space around them. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, his voice shaking. "The human ship is targeting our flagship." Thyseville looked at the display. The human vessel was indeed pointing its main weapon at his command ship, the Pride of Krexnor. The weapon itself was unlike anything in the Council databases. It seemed to create a small distortion in space-time, bending light around it. "All ships, prepare to fire," Thyseville ordered. "If they want to fight, we'll give them one." 50,000 ships turned their weapons toward the single human vessel. The combined firepower of the Grand Armada was enough to shatter planets, to turn entire star systems into cosmic dust. Against one ship, it should have been instant victory. The human ship fired first. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries to come. The weapon didn't create an explosion. It didn't produce a beam of energy or launch a missile. Instead, it seemed to simply erase a section of space. The Pride of Krexnor, flagship of the Krexnoid fleet and one of the most powerful vessels in galactic history, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons and shields. The next moment, there was empty space where it had been, not destroyed, not blown apart, gone, as if it had never existed at all. The silence that followed was complete. 50,000 ships hung in space, their crews staring at the empty spot where their flagship had been. The human vessel floated calmly among them, its strange weapons still glowing. "How?" whispered the new fleet commander, taking over from the vanished Thyseville. "How is that possible?" On the Prometheus, Captain Rodriguez checked her readings. The matter-to-energy conversion had been perfect. Every atom of the Council flagship had been transformed into pure energy, which was then channeled harmlessly into hyperspace. The crew of the Pride of Krexnor had died instantly, without pain, their atoms becoming part of the cosmic background radiation. It was, Rodriguez reflected, probably more merciful than what the Council had intended for humanity. 3 centuries ago, Admiral Chen Okafor, she called over the fleet communication system. "Demonstration complete. The Council fleet is holding position. No return fire detected." On the bridge of the Terran Renaissance, Admiral Sarah Chen Okafor nodded. The message had been sent. The galaxy now understood that humanity had returned, with capabilities that made their previous technology look like stone tools. "Open a channel to the Council fleet," she ordered. When the channel opened, she could hear the panic in the background. Voices in dozens of languages, all asking the same questions. How had the humans done it? What kind of weapon could simply erase a ship from existence? How many more of them did the human fleet have? "Council fleet," Sarah said calmly. "This is Admiral Chen Okafor. I hope you found our demonstration educational." The response came from a voice she didn't recognize, probably whoever had taken command after Thyseville's death. You destroyed our flagship, killed thousands of innocent beings." "I gave them a clean death," Sarah replied. "More mercy than your species showed mine when you exiled us to die in the void. But I'm not here for revenge." She paused, letting that sink in. Around her, the bridge crew continued their work. The massive human fleet maintained its position, weapons powered down, shields at minimum. They were demonstrating something more, powerful than any weapon: restraint. "I'm transmitting coordinates to a neutral location," Sarah continued. "The planet Haven's Rest. You know it well. It's where your council used to hold peace negotiations. I suggest we meet there to discuss terms." "Terms?" The council voice sounded confused. "What terms?" "The terms of humanity's return to galactic civilization," Sarah said simply. "We're coming home, whether you like it or not." The question is whether we do this peacefully or whether we have to demonstrate our full capabilities." There was a long silence. Sarah could imagine the frantic discussions happening across the council fleet. Military commanders arguing with diplomats, scientists trying to understand what they had just witnessed, politicians calculating the cost of resistance versus cooperation. Finally, the voice returned. We need time to consult with the council. You have 6 hours," Sarah replied. "After that, we continue toward the galactic core. Your choice is simple. Meet us at Haven's Rest for negotiations or try to stop us with force. I think you've seen how well that worked out for the Pride of Krexnor." She closed the channel and turned to her staff. "Signal the fleet. We hold position here for 6 hours. After that, we proceed to Haven's Rest, whether the council agrees or not." "Admiral," asked Commander Martinez, "what if they choose to fight?" Sarah looked out at the massive human fleet. 1,000,000 ships, each one carrying technology that made the Council's best weapons look primitive. But more than that, each ship carried people who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. Humans and their allies who had been forged in the crucible of exile, who had learned to survive in the most hostile environment imaginable. "Then we show them what 300 years of survival has taught us," she said quietly. "But I don't think it will come to that. The council may be proud, but they're not stupid. They know when they're outclassed." On his new flagship, the emergency council commander stared at the human fleet through his telescopes. The ships seemed to stretch forever, each one a reminder of how badly the galaxy had underestimated humanity's potential. 300 years ago, the Council had thought they were solving a problem by exiling the humans. They had seen a species that was unpredictable, that refused to accept limitations, that turned every tool into a weapon. They had decided that such a species was too dangerous for civilized space. Now he understood the truth. They hadn't been removing a danger from the galaxy. They had been creating one. By forcing humanity into the void, they had given them the motivation and opportunity to become something far beyond what they had ever been. The humans had spent 3 centuries learning, growing, becoming stronger, and now they were back, no longer the weak species that had been exiled. They had become something that could erase Council flagships from existence with weapons that operated on principles the galaxy's best scientists couldn't understand. The commander opened a channel to Nexus Prime. "This is Emergency Fleet Commander Kesran. I need to speak with the full council immediately. We have a situation that requires immediate attention." As he waited for the connection, he looked again at the human fleet. Somewhere in that vast armada was the answer to a question that had haunted him since witnessing the destruction of the Pride of Krexnor. If one human ship could do that to their flagship, what could 1,000,000 ships do to the galaxy? He was afraid he was about to find out. The conference room on Haven's Rest had not been used for official negotiations in over 50 years. Now it buzzed with activity as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for what many believed would be the most important meeting in galactic history. Admiral Sarah Chen Okafor sat at one end of the massive oval table, flanked by her diplomatic team. But what surprised the council representatives was that only half of her team were human. The others represented species that most council members had never seen before. There was Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrians, whose blue skin seemed to shimmer with inner light. Beside him sat Songweaver Melody Wind of the Nomad Singers, a being whose very presence seemed to make the air vibrate with harmonic frequencies. Further down the table was Elder Root Speaker Thornbark, representing a collective of living planets that had joined humanity's alliance. Each of these beings represented civilizations that humanity had encountered in the void between galaxies. Each had chosen to stand with humanity, not because they were conquered, but because they shared humanity's vision of what the galaxy could become. Across from them sat the full Galactic Council. Archon Morden, despite his advanced age, had insisted on attending personally. The other council members looked nervous, still shaken by the destruction of the pride of Krexnor and the demonstration of human technological superiority. Admiral Chen Okafor, Morden began, his voice formal and careful. We appreciate your willingness to meet with us rather than pursuing other options. Sarah smiled. Archon Morden, I've read about you in our historical records. You cast the deciding vote for humanity's exile 3 centuries ago. The old Archon nodded slowly. I did. At the time, I believed it was necessary for galactic stability. Humanity was unpredictable, dangerous. And now? Sarah asked. Morden gestured toward the window where the human fleet could be seen in orbit around Haven's Rest. Even at this distance, the sheer size of the armada was overwhelming. Now I see that we may have made an error in judgment. Ambassador Zethkar of the Veltari leaned forward. Admiral, we must ask directly. What are your intentions? Your fleet is powerful enough to conquer the galaxy. Are you here for revenge? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Around the table, the council representatives waited tensely. Everything depended on her next words. 3 centuries ago, you exiled us because you were afraid of what humanity might become, she said finally. You were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons you thought. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. In the void between galaxies, we discovered something that you need to know about, something that makes our old disagreements seem very small. A hologram appeared above the table, showing images that made several council members gasp in horror. Vast ships that seemed to be made of living darkness. Worlds stripped of all matter, leaving behind only empty husks. Entire star systems consumed and converted into something else entirely. We call them the Devourers, Sarah continued. They are a civilization that exists solely to consume. They strip entire galaxies of matter and energy, leaving nothing behind but empty space, and they are heading this way. Elder Thysavel of the Krexnoids studied the images with growing alarm. How far away are they? Our best estimates suggest they will reach the galactic rim in approximately 200 years, replied Dr. Kim, Sarah's chief science officer. That sounds like a long time, but preparation for this kind of threat requires decades of work. Why should we believe you? Demanded the Silicon Mind representative. This could be an elaborate deception to justify your return. Songweaver Melody Wind spoke for the first time, her voice creating harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. Because we have fought them before. In the void between galaxies, we encountered their scout fleets. We barely survived. Activated her own hologram, showing the aftermath of a battle. The debris field stretched for light years, filled with the wreckage of ships from dozens of different species. But among the wreckage were the distinctive hulks of devourer vessels, their dark metal twisted and broken. This was the Battle of the Singing Void, Melody Wind continued. 50 different species stood together against a single devourer scouting fleet. We won, but the cost was enormous. And that was just a scouting fleet. The main force is 1,000 times larger. Morden studied the images carefully. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah returned to her seat. Integration. Humanity wants to rejoin galactic civilization, but not as subjects or conquerors, as partners. We have technologies, resources, and knowledge that can help prepare for what's coming. But we need your infrastructure, your population, your manufacturing capacity. And in return, asked Ambassador Zethkar, in return, we help you survive. What's coming? Sarah said simply. The Devourers have consumed 7 galaxies that we know of. The civilizations that lived there are gone, turned into raw materials for their war machine. Without preparation, without unity, this galaxy will be next. The council members exchanged glances. The proposal was far from what they had expected. They had come prepared to negotiate humanity's surrender or to plan for a devastating war. Instead, they were being offered partnership against a threat they had never imagined. "What kind of integration are you talking about?" asked the tree speaker representative. Ambassador Kethvar activated a new display. Shared colonies on suitable worlds. Joint research facilities to develop new defensive technologies. Combined military commands to coordinate galaxy-wide defense. Most importantly, the establishment of manufacturing centers capable of building the kinds of weapons and ships we'll need. "How do we know you won't simply take over once you're established?" demanded the Silicon Mind. Sarah smiled. "Because we don't want to rule the galaxy. We've spent 3 centuries building something better than an empire. We've created an alliance of equals, united not by conquest, but by shared purpose." She gestured to her diverse diplomatic team. "Every species you see here joined us freely. They stay with us freely. They could leave at any time if they chose to, but they don't, because they've seen what we can accomplish together." Elder Root Speaker Thornbark spoke in a voice like wind through ancient forests. "In the void, we learned that survival requires cooperation. No single species, no matter how advanced, can face the devourers alone. But working together, combining our strengths, we can not only survive, but thrive." The negotiations continued for hours. The Council asked detailed questions about human technology, about the Alliance species, about the Devourer threat. Slowly, a picture emerged of what the galaxy could become with human participation. Shared research that could advance every species by centuries. Medical technologies that could extend lifespans and eliminate diseases. Manufacturing techniques that could end scarcity and want. Defensive systems that could protect entire star systems from any imaginable threat. But most importantly, they learned about humanity's vision for the future. Not a galaxy ruled by humans, but a galaxy where every species could reach its full potential, where the diversity that had once been seen as a source of conflict could become a source of strength. As the sun set on Haven's Rest, Morden called for a recess. The council members needed time to discuss what they had heard, to consider the implications of accepting humanity's offer. "Admiral," Morden said as the meeting broke up, "I must ask you directly. If we refuse your offer, what will you do?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "We'll leave," she said finally. "We'll take our fleet and return to the void. We'll continue our preparations for the Devourers alone, and when they arrive, you'll face them without our help. And if we accept, then we'll build something together that neither of us could accomplish alone. We'll turn this galaxy into a fortress that even the Devourers cannot breach. We'll create a civilization that will last for millions of years." As the council members filed out, each lost in their own thoughts, Sarah remained by the window. The human fleet still hung in orbit, patient and waiting. Behind it, invisible in the dark of space, lay 1,000,000 worlds where humanity and its allies had built something unprecedented in galactic history. The choice was simple. The galaxy could remain divided and face destruction alone, or it could unite and face the future together. Sarah hoped they would choose wisely. But if they didn't, humanity would survive anyway. They always did. That was what made them human. 6 months had passed since the negotiations on Haven's Rest, and the galaxy was transforming in ways that no one could have imagined. Admiral Sarah Chen Okafor stood on the observation deck of Terra's Triumph, watching the construction of New Geneva Station in orbit around the planet Kepler 442b. The station was a marvel of combined engineering. Human quantum architecture formed the basic structure, while Veltari crystal technology provided the power systems. Crexinoid defensive systems protected the whole structure, and Zephyrian environmental controls made it comfortable for dozens of different species. It was exactly what Sarah had hoped for when she first proposed the integration. Not human technology, replacing galactic standard, but the best of all civilizations working together to create something greater than any of them could build alone. "Admiral," called Commander Torres from the communications station, "we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim defense grid. Construction is ahead of schedule on all sectors." Sarah nodded, pleased. The defense grid was the most ambitious project in galactic history. Thousands of automated defense platforms, powered by human quantum reactors and armed with the most advanced weapons that combined research could produce. When complete, it would form an impenetrable barrier around the entire galaxy. But the defenses were only part of the transformation. On worlds throughout the galaxy, new cities were rising. Human terraforming technology had turned barren planets into garden worlds almost overnight. Veltari crystal farming could produce enough food to feed billions. Silicon mined manufacturing created goods that lasted for centuries. Most importantly, the different species were learning to work together in ways that had been impossible under the old council system. Human adaptability combined with Krexnoid discipline. Veltari wisdom merged with Zephyrian creativity. Each species contributed their strengths, while others covered their weaknesses. "Status report on the fleet integration project?" Sarah asked. "Proceeding smoothly," replied Captain Martinez. "We now have over 200 mixed crew vessels in operation. The cultural exchange programs are working better than expected." Sarah smiled. The mixed crews had been her idea, and many council leaders had been skeptical. How could beings from completely different worlds work together on the same ship? But humans had learned during their exile that diversity was strength. Different perspectives led to better solutions. Different skills meant more problems could be solved. The results spoke for themselves. Mixed cruise ships consistently outperformed single-species vessels in every category. They were more innovative, more adaptable, and more effective in crisis situations. "Admiral," Dr. Kim called from the science station. "Long-range sensors are detecting something unusual from the galactic edge. You should see this." A hologram appeared above the central display, showing the region of space where the Devourers were expected to appear. But instead of empty void, the sensors showed something else entirely. Ships, massive ones, moving in the distinctive patterns that marked them as belonging to the enemy. "They're early," Dr. Kim said grimly. "By our calculations, they shouldn't arrive for another 150 years. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat, but forced herself to remain calm. Around her, the bridge crew continued their work with professional efficiency. This was what they had been preparing for. This was why humanity had returned to the galaxy. "How many ships?" she asked. "Difficult to determine at this range, but our estimates suggest at least 10,000 vessels. This appears to be an advance force, not the main fleet. 10,000 ships. Under the old system, that would have been enough to conquer the entire galaxy. The Council's Grand Armada had only 50,000 ships, and they would have been spread across hundreds of star systems, unable to concentrate their forces effectively. But this was not the old system. "Signal all defense stations," Sarah ordered. "Activate the grid, send alerts to all fleet commanders, and get me a direct line to the Galactic Defense Council." The Galactic Defense Council was the new governing body that had replaced the old council. It included representatives from every major species, but also from humanity's extragalactic allies. More importantly, it was designed to make decisions quickly in crisis situations. "Admiral Chen Okafor," came the voice of Supreme Coordinator Zethkar, who had been elected to lead the new government. "We're receiving your sensor data now. How long do we have?" "At their current approach speed, approximately 6 weeks until they reach the outer defense perimeter," Sarah replied. "But we're ready for them." And they were. The combined fleets of the galaxy now numbered over 3 million ships, each one equipped with the most advanced technology that United Research could produce. The defense grid added another 50,000 automated platforms, strategically positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. But more than the numbers, it was the coordination that mattered. Under the old system, each species would have defended their own territory, leaving gaps that the enemy could exploit. Now, every ship and every station was part of a single unified defense network. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Chen Okafor," Sarah broadcast on the general command frequency. "You know why we're here. 300 years ago, humanity was exiled from this galaxy. Today, we stand together with our allies to defend our home against the greatest threat any of us has ever faced." The responses came back quickly. Human captains, yes, but also Veltari, Krexnoids, Silicon mines, and dozens of other species. All of them ready to fight, all of them united in purpose. "Admiral," Captain Martinez called, "the Devourer fleet is changing course. They're heading directly for the Sol system." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Sol, Earth, humanity's birth world, now restored and thriving as the symbolic heart of the new Galactic Alliance. If the Devourers wanted to make a statement, they couldn't have chosen a better target. "They're testing us," she realized. "They want to see how we respond to a direct threat to our most important world." "Orders, Admiral?" asked Commander Torres. Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking of all the worlds that now depended on humanity's protection. Billions of beings from hundreds of species, all trusting that the Alliance would keep them safe. She thought of Earth, where children of a dozen different species now played together in parks that had been rebuilt with technology from across the galaxy. She thought of the research stations, where the greatest minds of every civilization worked together to push the boundaries of knowledge. She thought of the manufacturing worlds, where abundance had replaced scarcity, where no being had to go without the necessities of life. This was what they were fighting for. Not just survival, but the right to build something better than what had come before. "Signal the 5th Fleet," she ordered. "Full battle deployment to the Sol system. Signal the 12th and 18th Fleets to take flanking positions at Proxima. Centauri and Wolf, 359, and activate the Sol defense grid to maximum power." "Ma'am," Dr. Kim called, "the Devourer fleet has increased speed. Estimated time to contact is now 4 weeks. 4 weeks to prepare for the first test of everything they had built together. 4 weeks to prove that the galaxy's new unity was stronger than the forces that sought to destroy it." Sarah opened a channel to all civilian populations. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, "this is Admiral Chen Okafor speaking to you from the bridge of Terra's Triumph. Our long-range sensors have detected the approach of the threat we have been preparing for. In 4 weeks, we will face our first battle against the Devourers." She paused, letting that sink in across thousands of worlds. "I want you to know that we are ready. The defenses we have built together are stronger than anything the galaxy has ever seen. The fleets we have created represent the combined strength of every civilization in our alliance. And most importantly, we stand united in our determination to protect everything we have built together." The response was immediate. From Earth to the Rim worlds, from the crystal cities of the Veltari to the living planets of the Tree Speakers, voices rose in support. Not just human voices, but the sounds and songs of 100 different species, all united in their determination to survive. 4 weeks later, when the Devourer fleet finally arrived at Sol, they found something they had never encountered before in their conquest of 7 galaxies. They found a civilization that had learned from humanity's greatest lesson, that together any challenge could be overcome. The battle was fierce, but brief. When it was over, the Devourer advance fleet was nothing but debris, scattered across the Sol system like broken toys. And throughout the galaxy, beings of every species celebrated their first victory in what would be a long war. But they would win that war. Sarah was certain of it. Because they had something the Devourers had never faced before. They had humanity's stubborn refusal to give up, combined with the combined strength of 1,000,000 worlds. The exile was over, the protection had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.